What's going on, everybody? Good evening. This is a little bit later than I usually upload, but I wanted an opportunity for the combine data to all come trickling in because, as some of you probably know, I was unable to watch the actual combine coverage today, so I had to rely on people posting clips on X. I had to rely on people posting the data on X. Had to rely on NFL.com updating their wonderful combine tracker. So I was kind of dependent on them rather than just able to learn what I needed to learn from the actual footage live on NFL Network. So tomorrow will be a different story, but for today, I wanted to lean on that. And I have some thoughts about what we've seen so far. They're not radically different from the general consensus, but here's what I was able to put together in terms of what we've learned from this combine. So I have my notes over here, by the way, so I'm going to be looking at them as we go through here. But let's start with the defensive ends slash outside linebackers. So these are more like the edge rushers. Some of these guys may not end up playing edge rusher in the NFL, but they kind of fill that mold of either being like a 4-3 end or a 3-4 outside linebacker. Some of them might move to defensive end. It's possible. But let me drag my notes over here, actually. That's a little bit better. And let's take a look at what we learned here. So, the defensive end group, the guys who stood out to me one way or the other, the guys who I thought did something particularly notable today included Dallas Turner. So, Dallas Turner may have had the best day of any defensive end in this combine. 4.4640, which was, I believe, the fastest 40 time for any edge player. So, lightning fast. 1.54 10-yard split, which is fantastic for an edge player. And I think it was tied for tops at the position. 40.5-inch vertical, which I believe was the top. And then a 10-foot 7-inch broad, which I believe was 1 inch short of number one. So at every position, Dallas Turner was dominant. At every area, Dallas Turner was either the best or one of the best. So Dallas Turner, I think he solidified himself as a probable top 10 pick. He needed a good combine to make it happen. I think this is the combine that made it happen. So Dallas Turner, when you combine that with the fact that his size is good, he came in at 247, so very similar to Will Anderson, more than workable for a 3-4 edge or a 4-3 Leo, and 34 and 3/8 inch arms. So more than good enough. That's well over the 50th percentile for edge players in the NFL. So he's got it all. He's the full package. As of right now, he's probably the biggest winner of this combine to me. The only other guy who I think could compete with him, at the very least at his position, would be Chop Robinson. And this would be the next guy that we need to briefly talk about here. Because Chop Robinson did some awesome stuff out there. And for a guy who I was having a really hard time getting a read on in the draft, I didn't know if he was going to be an early first, mid first, late first, early second. Definitely looks like a first rounder now. And honestly, I'm not even sure he would be there at 16. Like, I don't know how many Seahawks fans would want this guy, but this guy has been getting hyped up like crazy. People are watching the tape on him, and they're like, oh, look at his first step. His first step is amazing. And now he does this. 4.4840, so fast. 1.54 10-yard split, which is fantastic. And a 10-foot 8-inch broad, which was, I believe, the best of any edge player. It was tied for number one. 4.25 20-yard shuttle. Perfectly good for a player playing his position. So he was one of the most athletic edge players we had. In fact, right now the athletic score is third for all edge players. The only issue, because the size was there too, by the way, 254 pounds. So the size is there. The body type is there. The only thing, his arms are tiny, 32.5-inch. That is 13th percentile. That is the only thing that Chop Robinson did not have. He does not have the long arms. That's going to be a bit of a problem. But him and Dallas Turner both did some great things out there. Next guy that I want to discuss would be Marshon Neal. And mostly because this is a guy we met with the other day at the Combine, the Seahawks. So I think that Marshon Neal is on our radar, and I wanted to kind of figure out why. So I'm looking at this, and the first thing that comes to me is tweener. This guy is a tweener. He ran a 4.75 40, which obviously is not very good for an edge player. A 166 10-yard split, that's not really going to get it done. And he's 267 pounds, so he's a good 15, 20 pounds heavier than a typical edge rusher. So maybe this guy could be a 5 tech. Maybe this guy could bulk up a little bit and be like a 3-4 end, or maybe even a 3 tech. That might be pushing it a little bit. But this guy's a little bit of a tweener to me, it looks like. But it just really depends on where he wants to take this, right? Because his 3-cone was excellent, and his 20-yard shuttle was excellent. 7.023 cone was number 1 at his position. 418 20-yard shuttle was also excellent for players at his position. He also has really long arms, 34.5 inches. That's 84th percentile. So Marshon Neal has some very interesting tools. I just wonder what position he's going to play. Little too heavy to play on the edge, little too light to play in the middle. Figure it out. Next guy that I wanted to highlight here would be Jayx Hunt. This is a small school guy, Houston Christian University. But he tested well. He tested well, relatively speaking, for a guy who should be available in the later rounds, which is probably more interesting to us anyway. Are we really going to draft Dallas Turner? Are we really going to draft Chop Robinson? Probably not. A guy like Jayx Hunt might be actually a little more important to evaluate as Seahawks fans. 4.6, 440, workable. I know it's not as good as the top guys, but that's why the top guys are the top guys. 1.6, 10-yard split, that's usually going to be sufficient for the position. He had really good jumps, 37.5-inch vert, which is good. And then the broad was excellent. He broad jumped more than Dallas Turner, 10 foot 8 inches. His arms are nice and long, 79th percentile at 34 and 3/8 inches. So Jayx Hunt was a guy that a couple of my commenters mentioned yesterday, really wanting to keep an eye on during this combine process. I think he did well. And this is a guy who, I don't know exactly where he's going to end up falling in the draft, but I don't get the sense he's going to be some super hot commodity. So Jayx Hunt is definitely somebody to monitor at the edge position. Obviously, he doesn't compare to the top dogs, but for what he is, he's nice. He's good, and I can definitely see it now. In the not so good category, and I got to talk about this one. This one kind of hurt me a little bit personally because I like him. And he probably got some bad advice, but Bralen Trice looked bad. So, to run it down real quick, because I know that there are going to be some Seahawks fans that are going to want Bralen Trice come draft time because he's a local. He's not born here, but he played here at Washington, and he was a really good player. He dropped like 20-plus pounds. He's down to 245. Previously, they said he was like 270. All right? So, he's dropped weight. But his 40 time, 4.72, that's not okay. If you're going to drop weight that much, you cannot be running a 4.72. 10-yard split is 1.65. Not going to cut it. And his arms are short, by the way. 32.5 inches. That's 13th percentile. So I kind of feel like this guy maybe showed up to the combine injured and tried to run the drills anyway, which is a terrible idea. Don't do that. But at this point, Bralen Trice doesn't seem like he's going to be a first-rounder to me. This could be a guy who drops like a brick. And hopefully he does way better at his pro day. Presumably he'll be better by then because this is not it. This is not it. And if he doesn't do better at his pro day, it could be a bottomless pit he falls into here. These were some rough results. You cannot be dropping weight like this. Well, you can, of course, but you have to actually pick up speed. Final guy, a little bit of a sleeper here. Somebody I haven't talked about a lot, Cedric Johnson. 260, so he's a little bit heavier than the typical edge. And given the fact that he is 260, his results were good. 4.6, 340, 1.61 10-yard split. Really good numbers, very workable. If he drops a little bit of weight and picks up a little bit of speed, he'd be right up there with somebody like a... he wouldn't be up there with Chop or Dallas Turner, but he would be up in like the high 4.5s probably, which would be really good. And the 10-yard split would probably get sub 1.6, which would be really good. He jumped well. 38-inch vertical is really good. The 10-foot 2-inch broad is solid. He's got about average arm length, 33.5 inches. So yeah, Cedric Johnson did some very impressive things with his explosiveness and athleticism. and I look at his results and I say that's a guy who should probably be targeted in the draft because the Seahawks may be looking for edges in the area of the draft that Cedric Johnson ends up landing in. So those would be 6 guys at the defensive end slash outside linebacker, edge, whatever you want to call it, position that stood out to me from the combine. So let me know what you guys think. This isn't everybody, by the way. This isn't everything. There are definitely other guys who made some money or lost some money today, but these would be the guys that stand out to me. More videos coming later, but let me know. Let me know what you got down below. Let me know how you felt about things, and those would be the things that caught my attention.